Thank you for joining me today for another episode of Hunger Hunt Feast. Today, I want to talk about the effect of alcohol on weight loss, fat loss, and really its impact on weight gain and insulin. Really, what we hear a lot, just to jump into it here, is people referring to alcohol in terms of calories or even macros, like wine only has 4 grams of carbs, or beer is like liquid bread, which is it's complete understatement of its impact on your weight, on fat loss or fat gain. It's not just about the calories. It's not just about the carbs. Alcohol's impact on our metabolism is an impact on hormones, specifically insulin, causing insulin resistance, fat production, fatty liver. It is so much more so than just calories. Calorie is not just a calorie, right? As much as we understand that the type of food you eat affects hormones and fat gain, fat loss, alcohol is right there with it, just as much, if not more, in the way that it affects us. So, excuse me, if you've ever heard anybody talk about a diet, one of the first questions that comes up is, can I drink on this? Or how much can I drink? Or if you want to lose weight, alcohol is one of the last things you need to be consuming. Just right up there with sugar. It's basically a fermented sugar. So the impact is the pathway is a little different in the way it gets metabolized. It still has to be filtered through or detoxified through the liver. The fructose is mainly metabolized through the liver. Alcohol is metabolized some in the brain, around in other tissues, but its impact on the brain and liver affects our body's ability to burn fat, and really it's a fat storing process. So again, merely counting calories with your alcohol, underestimating its impact on fat storage and insulin resistance. So alcohol impairs the insulin control. This is one of the ways alcohol impairs insulin control or stimulation by the hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus controls some level of insulin release through the nervous system on the level of the liver. Okay, so its impact on the liver helps regulate, blood sugar, fat storage. And so hypothalamus is very involved in our metabolism, as is the liver. So throughout this process, you can create basically whole body insulin resistance. Even though it's just affecting the liver's response, you create whole body insulin resistance so that basically you have a lot more fat storage. Nothing's being stored as fuel. It's fat storage. And that fat storage is usually building or being created around the visceral area. So around your organs, liver, heart, lungs, kidneys, that layer of fat that's kind of under the muscle, below in the abdomen. So, insulin, just to review the role of insulin. Insulin is released when we have energy of some form in our system, more so for carbs, then protein, and then fat, different levels of stimulation there. But its role is to take that fuel and either move it into muscle to be stored as glycogen or for usage right then, be stored as glycogen or fat, or to move to or an excess amount, if the muscle doesn't need it, taken to fat tissue and stored as fat. Okay, it'll convert the glucose, the blood sugar, into fat and store it in the fat cells or in the liver, as we've heard of fatty liver. So the liver's role when insulin is low is to manage your blood sugar, keep the blood sugar level and release more glucose from its glycogen stores as needed. So if you're working out, you're doing something strenuous, stressful, brain's under stress, your brain's an energy hog. So it can release more glucose as needed or trigger fat burning, the breakdown of fat for fuel and for ketones to be released. So it manages your energy level in your bloodstream. That's why you don't need to snack throughout the day. That's your liver. Your liver's job is to give you the blood sugar that you need, or the ketones and fat burning that you need as needed. It's very well regulated in most cases. So when insulin goes up, for instance, there's energy coming into the system, like you've just eaten, okay, for instance, and you've got fuel in your bloodstream, insulin goes up to try to move that fuel out of the system. Well, you're not going to burn fat while that's happening, right? Because you've already got too much energy in your bloodstream. You're not going to keep breaking down fat, and your liver's not going to keep releasing glucose into your bloodstream. So it's going to stop that. It's not going to keep, especially when insulin is high, you're not going to keep pumping out more sugar and more fat when you're trying to clear the bloodstream to get down to normal levels. Think about what would happen there. We'll get into it, but you can see where I'm going if that was a problem, if it kept going. Now, when the hypothalamus is impacted by alcohol and can no longer, or impairs its control, insulin control or stimulation of insulin at the level of the liver, okay, then we have a problem with energy being in the system, but the liver continues to produce glucose or put out glucose in the bloodstream, or continue to breaking down, create fat, storing fat. So again, mostly visceral fat or fat in the liver. So you've got basically, when insulin comes down, glucagon, the other hormone released from your pancreas, goes up. Glucagon stimulates the release of the liver, at the level of the liver, glucose and fat burning. So it's not, when we have the hypothalamus impaired by alcohol, insulin is high to manage the energy, but liver doesn't get the signal to turn off the glucose release and the fat burning. So we have more energy going out, as well as insulin up, so energy is being stored. So not only is it storing the energy that you've just consumed, whether it's alcohol or food with the alcohol or mixer with the alcohol, it's also continuing to put out energy. So you're putting out energy and you're in storage mode. That's a problem, because you're going to store everything your liver is spitting out as fat. Now, of course, that assuming the muscles are full. But if you're taking in energy, most of the time your muscles already have all they can handle, unless you've just worked out or just done something strenuous. Liver's probably full. Glycogen only holds about 400 grams of glycogen. So it's, most cases, what it's spitting out is being stored as fat. So not only, again, just to understand, we're not only storing what's in the bloodstream that you just consumed, but you're storing what the liver keeps pumping out, because it's not getting the signal to shut off. So you imagine that would lead to continued insulin resistance throughout the body. You're just overwhelmed with energy, and all your body's just trying to store it as quickly as possible to get out of the bloodstream. Okay, and you really end up with, even after the alcohol is processed out of your system, continued insulin resistance, a very unhealthy liver, because it's storing fat in there. It's got impaired, it's affected its metabolic function, right? And it's spitting out triglycerides like crazy. So you got really high triglycerides, which would raise your cholesterol in such a way that you don't want, right? You have an insulin resistant environment, high triglycerides. Those triglycerides are going to bump up your total cholesterol number. That's why looking at cholesterol quality is so important. If you have low triglycerides, high HDL, yeah, you're okay. You're okay. Now, whatever your cholesterol number is. If you have high triglycerides, maybe lower HDL, then you have a problem. Again, no matter what your total cholesterol is, because that's an insulin resistant environment. So if you don't, I hope you understand, the fat burning is multiplied, not only from the alcohol, but the effect of the alcohol in the liver So it's not just the calories from the alcohol. It's not the energy from the alcohol. It's all of the energy your liver is spitting out because the hypothalamus can't shut it off, or is impaired at shutting off. And this now again, and if you're eating at the same time, you're having the alcohol, which is not unusual, right? So you're having a sugary mixer with the alcohol, your chips with your beer, dessert with your wine. You're adding to the energy as well. That's there. So again, alcohol far more of an impact than just calories or macros. Now they ran an experiment with rats, believe it or not, binge drinking experiment with rats. How fun must that have been? A bunch of drunk rats running around, but they had a binge drinking for like 3 days. And after the alcohol had been processed, or the last dose of alcohol, they were insulin resistant for 54 hours. Okay. So 2.5 days, give or take, right? After the last dose of alcohol. So the study was done on basically the effect of binge drinking. But even after the effect, after the alcohol had long been metabolized and processed, right? 2.5 days, it's gone, even after binge drinking for 3 days. But the effect was still there, which led researchers to believe that binge drinking, basically assumed that binge drinking even once a week, let's say someone once a week binge drinking, would have an effect on their insulin levels and their liver's ability to properly react to the impact of insulin, energy. It's okay, part of the metabolic process, for possibly years after they'd stopped drinking, years. So it's a residual effect because of the fat storage in the liver and the impact, I guess even on the hypothalamus's effect or impairment of control over the liver. So it's a long-term effect way beyond the consumption. Now, beyond that metabolic effect, we also have in the processing or the detoxification and in the metabolism of the alcohol in the liver, a response much like fructose has. So the creation of what are called ROS, reactive oxygen species. And these are formed in the liver, which would causes the oxidation of liver cells. Now, ROS are known to play a big role in cancer development, atherosclerosis, diabetes, inflammation in general, aging as a whole, right? Because of the oxidation effect. They actually cause what's called a peroxidation of lipids. So they're stealing electrons from unsaturated fatty acids, creating a lipid radical essentially with a missing electron that basically, in addition, damages cell membranes, which are made of lipids, right? Made of fat and cholesterol, damages our mitochondria, and leads to cell death, both from apoptosis, so cell suicide, and necrosis, because of the damage to the cell membrane and the mitochondria. And the lipid radicals, basically, which are the damaged unsaturated fatty acids, are continuing to do the same, create more free radicals and damage, again, cell membranes that they come in contact with, because they're made of, right, lipids, right, fat and cholesterol, cell membrane. And so if you have a damaged cell or cell membrane, and that starts duplicating, right, we have a problem. We're duplicating damaged cells. That's pretty much the definition of cancer, right? At the very least, you have impairment of function. So again, much like fructose metabolism, causing the oxidation and damage to the cells, to the mitochondria, using up a lot of the antioxidants that are endogenous that we create, right? Like glutathione in the liver used up, to offset all of this oxidation. So using up all of our antioxidants, and usually there's a lot more oxidation or oxidized cells and oxidized mitochondria than antioxidants can handle. So it uses them up, and then we have plenty left over, plenty of damage. Now, in the process, again, much like fructose, uric acid is a byproduct. That's why alcohol is so closely associated with gout, just like fructose is. So uric acid is a byproduct of the metabolism. And then, again, like fructose, we have a reduction in the ATP, or the energy, the cellular energy that is being produced. And that energy is instead converted directly to fat in the liver. Alcoholic fatty liver disease. When it's with fructose, it's non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Still fatty liver disease. Again, through the process, uric acid is produced. Not doesn't mean you're going to get gout, but you're creating more uric acid. So you have a propensity for gout. You have a problem excreting the uric acid for whatever reason, genetic or otherwise. Then you are at greater risk for gout. Okay, but the problem that everyone's going to experience is a reduction of the ATP from the energy. So you're just not getting usable energy from the metabolic process until it's converted to fat. So there's no cellular energy; it's just converted directly to fat in the liver. You get more insulin resistance, particularly from damaged mitochondria. Those are the powerhouse of your cell. That's where your energy is created. You have damaged mitochondria, or as well as in the case of fructose, not only damaged, but a reduced number of mitochondria. You have a lot less energy being produced or able to be utilized for immediate energy, right? So it's just more being stored. As we get kind of lethargic, low energy, more fat storage, less fat burning, less energy produced. So, and then was a study done to see which alcohol created the greatest or played the more significant role with blood uric acid levels. And of course, they found that it was both beer and liquor were substantially increased blood uric acid levels. Wine, not as much. Beer being the more impactful, which is not surprising because of not only the alcohol and you could say the carbs or the wheat, but the brewer's yeast. Brewer yeast actually increases uric acid as well. So not only the alcohol, so you have just alcohol in liver, you have less alcohol in beer, obviously, right? Wine being a little, somewhere in the middle there, a little less alcohol. But what made beer much more impactful was the fact that it has brewer's yeast, which increases the uric acid levels. Because even non-alcoholic beer will increase uric acid levels. But beer's got the best of both, right? Got the alcohol and the brewer's yeast. So beer seems to be the most closely associated with the increased risk of what's called hyper uricemia, which is basically the overproduction of uric acid and it's most common in men, and most common with men with what they call a high alcohol intake, which they defined as 12 or more drinks per week. So if you're having 2 drinks a day, every day of the week, that's 14. You're over the 12. So 12 or more, 2 drinks a day, you're a higher risk of uric acid, what's called hyperuricemia, overproduction of uric acid. And there's yet another study. So I have several of these studies listed in the show notes. Binge drinking once a week, as I mentioned before, long-term insulin resistance because of the damage to the liver. So beer really is the worst, then liquor, then wine. But if you're adding, let's say you add some sugar in with your liquor, okay, like a mixer or whatever you're eating with it, you're increasing the impact on the insulin resistance. Okay. Uric acid is, yes, a greater risk for gout, but that's part of the metabolic process or byproduct, which then negatively impacts the mitochondria. And part of the whole oxidation and damage, which increases the fat storage rather than energy, ready energy produced, cellular energy of ATP. Now, in my experience as a coach, working with people, weight loss, both online groups as one-on-one, as well as one-on-one clients, drinking more than say 2 drinks a week really seem to slow or stop weight loss for most people, even when they're doing everything else right. So I had a low carb group. I had one lady I remember in particular who she was doing everything else right. And at first, everything weight loss was going well, had reduced alcohol, we were doing intermittent fasting with a low carb diet. And she was, losing about pound, sometimes pound and a half a week, really good pace. And suddenly her weight loss stopped. So I started asking some questions or slowed down to about a quarter pound, maybe a half pound a week. Asking some questions. Well, yeah, I've been having a couple extra drinks, basically having a couple drinks, maybe 3 nights a week, 3-4 nights a week, maybe. And it brought her weight loss down from, again, a pound and a half to like a quarter pound to a half pound a week. Totally impaired the weight loss, reduced the wine back to, and it was wine. It wasn't like beer. It wasn't hard liquor. It was just wine. The most of it's supposed to be least impactful, right? It's supposed to be least impactful on fat loss and uric acid production and wine. Reduce that down to 1 or 2 drinks a week. Weight loss resumed back to a pound a week, pound and a half a week. Another personal client who I was working out with. So I met him 3 or 4 times a week, working out, fasting, low carb, doing everything right, but stuck, nothing moving. So started asking questions. Let's dig in. Let's see what's going on here. Realized having a drink after work pretty much 3 or 4 nights a week. 3-4 nights a week, having 1 or 2 drinks after work. I'm saying you're doing it, working out hard, 3 or 4 hours a week. Intermittent fasting, low carb, do everything right. Weight loss was like quarter pound, half pound a week. Not what you would expect from all out effort. Stop the alcohol and started consistently, stopped it, basically just stopped drinking altogether for a number of weeks. And then eventually I think came back to 1 or 2 a week, but stopped the alcohol. We started seeing 1 to 2 pounds a week of weight loss. So that's anecdotal. That's my experience with it. Which I think really it's in the clinical space. It counts. So if we have research, even some of this was surveys. Some of this research was surveys, based on, what people drank, the impact of the certain types of alcohol on uric acid levels and weight loss. Some is done on rats, yes, but we have consistent research that lines up with my experience and a number of other people's experiences, with alcohol as coaches or as you're trying to lose weight. Much as we don't want to admit it, alcohol will impair weight loss even when you're doing everything else right. Now, is it going to be the same for everyone? Of course not. But in general, I have found 1 or 2 drinks, whether that's 1 drink on 2 nights a week or 2 drinks on 1 night a week, doesn't really matter. But I know 2 drinks a week, you're probably safe. If you can hold it to that, you're safe as far as continuing to lose weight. If all your other efforts are good, you're still going to see some progress. If you can eliminate it altogether until you lose the weight you want to lose, even better. More than 2 drinks a week, you're going to have to figure out what your level is. But in general, that works for most people in my personal experience. So that's the caveat, my personal experience as a coach. Now, once you get to goal weight or your goal body composition, goal body fat that you want to hit, then yeah, you can ease up a bit and find the amount that works for you to maintain and not regain the weight or regain the fat, right? But just remember, it's not just about the calories, obviously, or even just about weight gain. because we're talking about oxidation of cells and cell membranes and mitochondria. So you can reduce mitochondria. Yes, it's going to affect your weight. But if you start damaging cell membranes and oxidizing cell membranes, right, increased risk of cancer, atherosclerosis, diabetes. You're going to have problems in arteries, right? Cancer cells. It's your long-term health. Okay. It goes way beyond weight. Even if you can manage your weight, consistent alcohol intake most days of the week, it has a hormonal impact, but it also has the oxidative impact. And that will affect your long-term health, depending on how much you're drinking, how long you're drinking, and your particular genetics. So understand, if you're just looking at the scale, if you're just looking at your body comp, well, good for you if you've achieved your goal that you want to maintain and you want to ease up a bit and have a few drinks here and there. But don't underestimate its impact or its ability to harm your health because you've managed to maintain the weight that you want or the body comp that you want. You found your zone where you're okay and you've figured out how to manage that. That's a good indication you're probably not over consuming if you're able to maintain weight. But we have to respect alcohol for what it is. It works for what we want it for, right? To take the edge off, to help us take the day away, the stress of the day, so we can, when we meet with our family, when we meet with our friends, we aren't carrying that same level of stress and drive that we had throughout our workday, so we can relate to them on a personal level, a relaxed level, right? I get it. Totally get it. And it works. Alcohol works for that. It's great for that effect. But it has a bite to it. It has a negative impact, not just on weight, as I pointed out, but on your long-term health, if it's affecting your hypothalamus, okay, in your brain, impact on really just on insulin and the liver. What else is it affecting in your brain? What else is it? What other areas that we haven't yet either discovered or tested, right? Is it affecting that the brain is controlling, right? Or the way we think about things? What other chemistry is it affecting? As if insulin resistance and oxidative damage to cell membranes isn't enough. And uric acid levels climbing, putting you at risk of gout, isn't enough. We have to respect it for what it is, for what it does. And if you know you're over consuming, you get that under control for your long-term health. And for those people around you, find another way to deal with the stress. But if you're drinking most days of the week in such a way that it's impacting your mood, like you can feel it, or you can tell that it's enough to downregulate your mental, right? Your mental energy, your emotional state. Yeah, you're creating a dependence, but you're also creating a habit where you will develop what you'll say, I have a tolerance for it. You have a mental tolerance where it's not affecting your ability to function, right? To do certain tasks right? But it still has creates oxidative stress. So you're just less affected by it mentally, but the oxidative impact, right? Again, creating free radicals, which is age, which is cellular damage. we overlook that. We don't think about it. But cell membranes are made of fat. And if it's creating peroxidation, it's creating lipid radicals, which are then going around stealing electrons and creating more, free radicals, more inflammation. This is how we get disease. Leads to rapid aging. We have heart attacks, cancer, diabetes. I'm resting here, aren't I? I'm spending a lot of time on this at the end here. Don't underestimate its impact on your health, on your long-term health, and how it could affect you 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. What are your goals for longevity? Do you want to have a longer, not just health lifespan, but health span? What are your goals? Is it worth looking into other ways to manage your stress so you can limit the days of the week in which you enjoy a drink or two? Have a great week.